The PC platform has a vast library of games, spanning multiple generations and different kinds of genres. It's a tough task to choose the best of the bunch, but we've tried to compile a list of 30 of the best games that you can play on PC. Given the limited number of entries, it's pretty likely that many of your favorites might not make the list. Also, let us know what games you would include in such a list down in the comments below. With that out of the way, let's begin right away. Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons comes from Joseph Fares, the mastermind behind popular co-op games like A Way Out and It Takes Two. The game tells a heartwarming story about two brothers working together through a vast world, and the mechanics do a good job of encouraging synergy between the player in new and interesting ways. Between this and the charming art style on offer, Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons becomes a great game to play with a loved one. Journey. The Journey is an unforgettable experience that manages to say so much without really saying anything. It's a brief adventure that takes you through a bunch of wondrous locations, all while some majestic tunes play in the background, and the story accompanying it is appropriately fleshed out and tugs at the heartstrings in all the right ways. Journey was one of the first games to put the argument of games as art, and it remains so special to this day. Celeste. Celeste is all about conquering a large mountain, and that journey is beautifully reflected through Madeline's own journey of overcoming self-doubt and crippling anxiety. It touches on some heavy themes, but the story does a great job of justifying those themes. With simple writing and addictive gameplay, Celeste's platforming challenges can get quite brutal at times, but what makes it special is its insistence on smart use of your moveset over pixel-perfect jumps. Inside. Inside might be a simplistic game about a boy making his way through wild jungles and science facilities, but once you look past that surface-level facade, you'll notice that Inside is a surreal experience that manages to say so much with its simple set of mechanics and minimalistic story. It tackles some heavy themes, and it's able to do justice to those themes through its simple art style and somber music that appropriately matches whatever's happening on the screen. Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Moon Studios delivered a fantastic sequel with Ori and the Will of the Wisps, which thrusts players into a beautiful world that's inhabited by all sorts of wondrous creatures. Despite a simplistic story, Ori manages to introduce some strong emotions of empathy within the player, and a lot of that can be attributed to its beautiful atmosphere and soothing music. The gameplay remains as tight as ever, and the developers have a great understanding of doling out new abilities at the right time, which keep it consistently engaging as an experience. Cuphead. Cuphead expertly hides its brutal bullet-hell boss battles underneath its charming veneer of hand-drawn levels and characters. While it's not everyone's cup of tea, Cuphead can be a really enjoyable experience that's all about learning patterns and performing the right moves to defeat the bosses. There's just a distinct sense of achievement that you get when you beat a particularly difficult boss, and there are perhaps only a few games that can provide that feeling of pride and self-satisfaction. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. MGS5 was Kojima's swan song Metal Gear, and he made sure to make it the most memorable one to date. The vast open world of Afghanistan is filled to the brim with things to do, and The Phantom Pain lets you lose with a wide arsenal of tools to carve out your own fun within this immaculately crafted sandbox. The story might have a few loose ends, but it's more than enough to keep you interested well after the credits roll. Overwatch. Overwatch might just be one of the few multiplayer shooters that defined the last generation, and that praise can be attributed to a couple of reasons. Firstly, Overwatch's roster of characters is both functionally and visually distinct from one another, and there's a ton of fun to be had from experimenting with different character combinations and finding new synergies and metas. The map designs and the many well-designed game modes on offer also do a great job of keeping things interesting as you rise through the ranks. Street Fighter VI. Street Fighter VI takes the franchise from a rather restricted set of 2D backdrops to an open-world experience where exploration goes hand in hand with the brutal melee combat that the series is known for, and it all works surprisingly well, and it manages to feel both fresh and recognizable at the same time. Add to that the gorgeous art style and the immense depth of the combat system, and Street Fighter VI becomes a game that you could literally spend days upon mastering new characters and beating tough fights. Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. If the base game of Cyberpunk 2077 was a proof of concept, the Phantom Liberty expansion is a realization of those concepts. The detective thriller setting manages to remain interesting through and through, and the choices you make during critical moments have the ability to alter the outcome in a drastic fashion. The gameplay is also much better, with new weapons, abilities, and a revamped progression tree that allows you to build out your character in a specific direction. Fallout 3. Fallout 3 thrusts players into the wonderfully realized post-apocalyptic world brimming with interesting quests to complete and areas to explore. It's a vast world with tons of content, and the decisions that you make during your travels can have a surprising effect on the world and the story. Between this and the freedom to build out your character with different perks, Fallout 3 becomes an extremely fleshed out RPG that you could spend dozens upon dozens of hours grinding through. Forza Horizon 5. Forza Horizon 5 provides the ultimate fantasy of driving through picturesque vistas while seated in one of the most luxurious cars on the planet. With its vast open world populated by different kinds of biomes and the massive selection of vehicles on offer, Forza Horizon 5 is just a dream come true for fans of car culture. But even if you're not too much into cars, Forza Horizon 5 will instantly hook you with its gorgeous graphics and a surprisingly addictive progression loop where you are always working towards something. Control. Remedy Entertainment's Control is all about Jesse assuming the role of FPC director and preventing the hiss from spreading far out into the world. The brutalist architecture of the FPC headquarters provides an excellent contrast to the weird paranormal activities and experiments in its deepest, darkest corners, and the gameplay is bombastic in all the right ways. It's a gorgeous game that's surprisingly fleshed out with detailed lore and backstories, and adventure game fans should definitely check this one out. God of War. Featuring a new camera angle, the 2018 reboot featured amazing vistas and an engaging gameplay loop. Combining some elements from the RPG genre, the gameplay is all about chaining combos and dodging strikes at the right time, and this new approach is equal parts fresh and satisfying. Disco Elysium: The Final Cut. Disco Elysium is an interesting RPG that's entirely based around navigating tough conversations and using them to come up with your own deductions of the many cases littered throughout its open world. The writing is consistently top quality, with memorable characters and distinct dilemmas presented to you at every corner, and the choices have the ability to alter the course of the story in different ways. Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice puts players in the shoes of Shinobi as he awakes from the dead to fulfill his duty of protecting his oath-sworn master. Sekiro is a spiritual successor to Tenchu, which is why stealth plays an important role in thinning enemy resistance before you start out slashing your sword. But when that does happen, Sekiro features an expertly designed combat loop that rewards aggression and precision with its posture meter. Add to those memorable bosses like Guardian Ape and Genichiro, and Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice becomes a really enchanting experience. The Elder Scrolls III: Morrowind. The Elder Scrolls III: Morrowind might feel like a dated game at this point in time, but it cannot be overstated how big of a technological achievement it was for its time. Morrowind features a vast world with different factions, a complex set of mechanics that enable you to build out your character in the way you choose, and of course, a vast breadth of quests to tackle. It laid the groundwork for many of the elements we would see in Oblivion and Skyrim, and it's definitely worth a look even after all these years. Portal 2. Valve released Portal 2 in 2011, and there's perhaps no other game that has managed to capture the same feeling since. Valve takes a simple set of mechanics and crafts a bunch of different puzzle scenarios that would leave you scratching your heads for just long enough to feel clever for overcoming that obstacle. Combine that with the genuinely engaging story, and it isn't hard to understand why Portal 2 remains such a highly revered game after all these years. Undertale. Undertale flips the concept of RPGs on its head by asking you not to kill the monsters that lie in your path and making that pacifist route much more difficult than the standard route. It's a special game that tells an engaging story about a kid trapped in the titular underground. Half-Life Alyx. Half-Life Alyx can be considered one of the most important games of recent memory, mostly because it makes a strong case for VR games being more than just a passing gimmick. It makes great use of that added plane of interactivity and crafts some amazing scenarios and memorable firefights, along with a story that manages to be good by Half-Life standards. It might not be the Half-Life 3 that hundreds of thousands of fans wanted, but it wears its originality as a proud badge of honor, which makes this VR adventure so adorable. Mass Effect 2. Mass Effect 2 is a massive space opera where you assume the role of Commander Shepard as he takes on the titular Collectors. The gameplay is all about commanding your squad through increasingly tough battles, all while engaging in some enjoyable cover-based shooting, and the story forces you to navigate through tough decisions that can alter the course of the story in significant ways. Mass Effect 2 is a truly special game, and it has stood the test of time. Alan Wake 2. Remedy has proven itself a more than capable developer when it comes to creating games that can really get into your psyche with its weird concepts and interesting visual presentation, and Alan Wake 2 perhaps represents the best of these strengths. Wake's journey of getting out of the dark place is elaborate in all the right ways, and the survival horror gameplay is all about exploring new areas and making sense of the dual protagonist narrative by piecing together clues and advancing the story. It's difficult to describe what makes Alan Wake 2 so impressive, but it is a game worth playing through to the end. Grand Theft Auto 5. At this point, it feels like GTA 5 might have transcended from being a popular video game to being a pop culture sensation. It wouldn't be an understatement to say that Rockstar hit a golden jackpot with GTA Online, and it's a jackpot that just never stops giving. Of course, there are meaningful updates and activities that have kept players engaged for more than a decade now, and it's showing no signs of slowing down either. The Elder Scrolls V: Skyrim. Much like GTA 5, Skyrim has also proven to be a timeless classic that continues to sell thousands upon thousands of copies with each new remaster or re-release. But credit where credit is due, Skyrim is an unforgettable adventure that really captures the feeling of being part of a living and breathing world. There's just a vast breadth of things to do and people to meet, and you can spend days exploring its many areas and still come across something new after some time. Starfield. Starfield feels like the embodiment of Bethesda's greatest strengths: a compelling open world, quality writing, and a complex web of mechanics and systems that mesh together with one another. It takes the foundations of prior games like Fallout or The Elder Scrolls and masterfully adapts it to outer space with elements like space dogfights and procedurally generated planets. The NASA punk designs also strike a great balance between realism and fantasy, which makes it an experience like no other. Half-Life 2. Half-Life 2 had the immense pressure of being a sequel to one of the best games of the 1990s, and Valve successfully surpassed those expectations in more ways than one. Half-Life 2 drops players into a futuristic dystopia where Gordon wages a war against the Combine forces, and that adventure is punctuated with plenty of memorable set pieces and well-realized levels. The combination of physics-based puzzles, the spectacular visuals, and the frenetic gunplay was something truly special at the time, and it remains surprisingly fresh to this date. The Witcher 3: Wild Hunt. CD Projekt Red's The Witcher 3: Wild Hunt takes all across the fictional continent as you try to find the whereabouts of your daughter Ciri. The game expertly manages its plot on a micro and macro level, meshing together a well-realized fantasy world with a set of likable characters that have realistic motivations and ambitions. The gameplay is also similarly complex, albeit in a good way, and you can take part in a wide variety of side activities like beast hunting or Gwent. Baldur's Gate 3. In so many ways, Larian Studios' latest Baldur's Gate 3 feels like a bold showcase for how RPGs should be made. The game features a complex net of mechanics and systems that players can engage with, and you can use 3 mechanics in interesting ways to make your encounters even more personal. In a similar vein, the story takes you to all different locations as you consistently meet new and interesting characters, and interactions with these characters will ultimately determine the outcome of your adventure. Despite its large scale, Baldur's Gate 3 is chock full of attention to micro-level detail, and that takes a staggering amount of work to pull off. Elden Ring. Elden Ring might just be From Software's best game, and that's saying something since the developer is behind some of the most beloved games of all time. But what differentiates Elden Ring from its peers is its ability to take you on a grand adventure through the lands between, and your personal journey from being a nobody to a master warrior, able to take on anything and everything that stands before you. Combine that with a fantastic setting and the massive combat flexibility, and Elden Ring can literally consume hundreds of hours of your life. Red Dead Redemption 2. Rockstar Games is a master of creating well-realized worlds and writing memorable stories, and there's perhaps no better game that's emblematic of those strengths than Red Dead Redemption 2. Be it the complex net of systems and mechanics found in the open world, or the staggering amount of detail on offer, or the redemption arc of protagonist Arthur Morgan, Red Dead Redemption 2 continually impresses with its high level of quality. It's a truly special game that gives as much as it takes, and every fan of open worlds should experience this gem. And that brings us to the end of the video. A quick request: we upload new videos every single day, and if you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing. It really helps us out. Also, don't forget to enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon so that you can receive daily video updates. Thanks for watching.